Good afternoon, everyone. In today's video, I'd like to do a quick trade recap on a bunch of existing trades we have open. So we'll start off by taking a look at the weekly squeezes that we set up on May 23rd. That's going to be the first thing we take a look at. And then afterwards, I'd also like to touch on the trade in Activision. Now, the way I've laid out this video is I will contrast what the trade looked like when we set it up, along with what the trade or the charts look like at the current time of making this video. So let's get started. The first one that we'll take a look at is Shopify. Now in Shopify, when we set up the video, we had a slingshot squeeze, pull back to the 50 simple, which is this yellow dashed line, and we were really looking to bounce away from that in a retest of that same 200% extension, 1454.42. So let's take a look to see what actually ended up happening in Shopify. So if I come into Thinkorswim here, here's a chart of Shopify. This candle right here is where we had that slingshot squeeze bounce from the 50-day. And you'll see really outside of 1, 2, and 3 weeks after which we had the signal that we chopped around sideways pretty much at the highs of that previous candle, we then finally made the move that we were looking for. The squeeze officially fired last week. Today is continuation momentum depending on where you're trying to get out. But 1454 was our target. We're exceeding that. We exceeded that rather. And the squeeze did end up firing long. So Shopify was an example of a trade in which you had very little heat, especially considering that you were on a weekly time frame chart. So a nice trade there in Shopify. The next one I'll talk about is FIVN. Now, FIVN got acquired today by Zoom, so that's something that changes the landscape of this trade. But let's first start by taking a look at what FIVN looked like when we actually had the setup. And that's right here. So we had a slingshot squeeze, a pullback inside of our key moving averages, really looking for a bit of chop, and for the squeeze, which currently had yellow dots to fire long. We also had 3 winners, 0 losers off of the same signal on the weekly time frame chart, which added to this overall idea that we expected the squeeze to fire long. Now, while the squeeze hasn't yet fired in FIVN, I think what you will see is you're starting to gather momentum. However, with the acquisition today, I think the back test is no longer as relevant, considering that now you'd essentially be owners in Zoom. And so here, I think while FIVN, the squeeze hasn't yet fired, we have an opportunity to get at a little bit more than what we actually entered at. So a nice-ish gain, a very small gain, but still a nice gain, better than a loser, 11.45%. And while that does seem like a lot, I think it's important to remember that FIVN is a more volatile stock, and 11% was not as much as we were looking for, especially considering that our average move here has been on average 17.9%. So that gives you an idea of FIVN. Now the third weekly squeeze that we had set up inside of here was in Vonage, VG. So let's switch gears, come into Vonage. Here, the squeeze so far looks like it's going to be firing this week. We had the 2 signals, 1, 2. We also had a squeeze signal most recently, really looking for the squeeze to get going, break above this previous high. That did not happen so far. If this position holds in that the squeeze fires this week, then this would be basically a scratch in terms of a trade. What I think is more likely to happen is this dot goes back into a black dot squeeze by the end of this week, and we continue to have an open trade in which the squeeze has yet to fire. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Does the squeeze fire, yes or no, in Vonage? And then finally, the last trade that we had was inside of Activision. And this is where on the weekly time frame chart, we had a good deal of chop. And if I scroll back just a little bit, you'll also notice that we had squeezes setting up really all across the place. And so that was our key reason here. We were looking for Activision to start to get going, make a move towards that 100 price point. And the trade that we were setting up was the 97.5 100 put credit spread. Our risk on that spread was only right around $60, and that entire $60 was the max loss, which we incurred at the close on last Friday with expiration. We had used options. We were trying to give this enough time with the monthly options, and unfortunately that trade just did not work out given the time parameters. You'll see here we're very much still inside of that chop in Activision, but we lost time on our actual option. So while we had data decay, while we had skewed the risk to reward in our favor, all of that good stuff, we were just wrong, I think, on the overall timing. So here in Activision, the trade is out. Now, if we take a look at this with a fresh set of eyes, we still have an active squeeze. We still have a Fibonacci support extension that has yet to be broken, that also is overlapping kind of nicely with that 50-day simple. And it'll be interesting to see, I think, if the support holds or if we end up breaking straight through it. We also have a catalyst event coming up soon here with earnings, And so that might be the trigger that pushes this one way or the other. So Activision, the one options trade we had set up, we're out of. That was a loser. And now we're really keeping an eye on Activision for any future potential setups. I think the idea of a tag of that 1272 is still very much active. We also have those key numbers like the $100 price point. So all reasons to pay attention to Activision and continue to see what happens and maybe get a chance to deploy another trade on Activision looking to actually play this move a second time. I hope you found this video to be useful for anyone in any one of these trades. We discussed Activision, we discussed Shopify, we discussed FIVN, and we discussed Vonage. 3 of those were off of the weekly time frame squeezes, and Activision was really an opportunity to try and collect premium, sell an in-the-money put credit spread, and try and grind out this move towards the $100 price point. All right, take care, everyone. Good luck trading, and we'll see you in the next update.